Hello, everybody. This is Julissa. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming back to my channel. Thank you so much to everybody who's listening right now in the podcast. Today is Monday, June 22nd, 2026. I'm here to do a second episode regarding the great testimony that we heard a couple weeks ago about Vincent Scott Borba, which is the founder of the giant cosmetic brand called E.L.F. And I told you guys in that video, in that episode, that I was going to make a second part because what transformation that he went through is so profound, and it's so much needed to hear his testimony in the times that we're living in right now. Because like I told you, when I do fashion shows, I see the need so much in beauty professionals and people in the industry, obviously. So that's why I'm here to give you the second part of that um, of this episode. Before I continue, I want to say thank you guys so much, everybody who has been subscribing on Spotify, who has been following the podcast on Spotify. All you have to do is just follow JulissaDesigns podcast. So every time I make a new episode, you will get a notification. It helps me as a creator. And, like I just said, you will get notified when I make a new episode. And also, doesn't cost you anything. So you just have to follow the podcast. I want to also thank everybody who's watching this video right now on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for liking and subscribing. Um, but talking about his testimony, and this is if you didn't hear the first part of this story about the beauty founder, Scott Vincent Borba, who founded the giant cosmetic brand, like I said, called E.L.F. Very popular brand, very well known, and in the midst of the high of cosmetics. The founder decided to leave everything behind and basically try everything that he can to become a priest. And that to me is such a big testimony because you have somebody who had the money, who has who has a celebrity status, who his world was among celebrities, and his business was going to the top in that moment, where the beauty industry was kind of like rising even above fashion. I mentioned that on my previous episode. And then he's like, I'm just going to walk away from the whole thing and I'm going to do a complete 180. And now I'm going to dedicate my life to be a priest to glorify the Lord. And people will look at that and think, yeah, you're crazy or you're going through some type of psychosis or mental health issues or something like this. But it comes at times in a person's life when they realize that everything that they work for so hard really is just leaving them empty. And I think that's one of the reasons here in his testimony. And I was suggesting everybody to go out and look for his interviews that he's been doing the last couple of weeks, where he tells more about what actually happened to him. And I just finished watching one of the interviews to kind of do this episode, and he's saying he felt so empty and he just wanted to glorify the Lord. He said previously he will be doing interviews talking about uh, what he created. I mean, a multi-million-dollar brand, and being sick, sought after by big celebrities. And he was saying he was just glorifying himself. But now he's so happy to be able to do a round of interviews, but this time to glorify the Lord. And let me tell you, I find in just him saying that, I remember in my case in 2013, um, I also went through that period of where, just to tell you a little bit about my story more and why I added the glory to God to my brand logo, and why I changed my whole kind of like goal behind my clothing brand. Around 2013, which is I think similar to him, I went through that also change and kind of realization that God was talking to me, and I was seeking to glorify myself. I was seeking to to just, because that's what they tell you. I think when you go to college, they always say to you, go, you graduate college, they say, put your name out there, you put your name out there, tell people about what you do, and, kind of like promote your own self. And I was creating clothing that was so unmodestly, right? And it's a process for me. I still working on that, but I think I also has changed a lot. But in that specific moment when God spoke to me, I was like, okay, I have to use my talents to glorify the Lord. And it's kind of hard to find the support when it comes to, like, I grew up in the church, so I always been around, people who believe in the Lord, since I was very young. I mean, I don't remember ever going to like a different type of church. So it's just what I found myself was that I always wanted to be a designer since I was very young too. I always knew this is what I wanted to do. And what I found myself, this type of resistance coming from people who believe in the Lord. When I will say, yeah, I'm going to school to be a fashion designer. And it's almost like they made it seem as though that God didn't support fashion designers. That, God is limited just to playing an instrument or singing. And it was so shocking to me to realize, oh my goodness, they really looking at me like I'm going to college to do something complete opposite of what, you know, something completely bad. I don't know what it was. I was like, I don't know what that is. But, time passing, all of that. And then when God gave me the revelation that all my talents should be used to glorify Him, and He kind of like brought me back, because I remember when I was very young, I also was thinking, every time I would sell a dress, this is me even before I even learned how to sew. I was very young when I thought about this. I was like, I'm gonna put a Christian tract, one of those pamphlets that they will hang out, right? And the people hang out in public places about salvation, all of that. And I remember saying, every time I will sell a dress, I'm gonna include that in the box, whatever, in the packaging, so that way I can share the gospel, with my creations. And I even thought, I'm like, wait, how am I gonna put this in a hanger? How am I gonna put this in a box or something like that? And I remember thinking about all of that when I was way young, even like before, like I said, even before fashion school and all of that. And because even I grew up in the church, but I also knew, like, my goal as a Christian is also to share the gospel, right? And then in 2013, what happened to me was I was like, I am trying to seek my own glory. I'm trying to glorify myself with this career. I'm trying to do all of that. And, it's so crazy, even though we grew up in the church and we know the word of God, I feel like it's not really spoken of enough in the church. I don't know. Like I said, I grew up in the church. You barely hear people talking about career in the church. It's all about, getting married, having kids, but they don't speak about careers. And I feel like that's such a missed opportunity right there, specifically for people who are younger, who go to church. Obviously, not every church is like that, but I feel like they miss out on that. You can be a professional basketball player and glorify the Lord. You can be a professional anything. You can be a professional person in the field, or going to school to learn a skill and still try to do everything to glorify the Lord. There are so many ways. I mean, God is not limited to just two talents, which is playing an instrument or singing. God is so big, so diverse, and we shouldn't, you know, look down on people that have other abilities. Not imagine if we all were like master at playing an instrument. Like, that is God is so diverse. Everybody's so different. And we should be able to embrace everybody's ability to do something else, right? Because everybody else is so needed in the kingdom. And in that moment when I was like, okay, I'm trying to glorify myself, I'm making very sexy clothing that I will be questioning when people will look at me and be like, "Oh my goodness, that dress is so sexy," or they'll be like, "Are you gonna put a cover here on the?" And it's so. I was like, I don't even see the problem with it. And then in that moment in 2013, God said, you're trying to glorify yourself, or your gifts and talents that should be used to glorify, God, to glorify me. And then I was like, okay, so I immediately changed everything. I changed my logo and added the glory to God you know, under my branding name. And then I changed my whole purpose of the branding, which is to share the gospel and glorify God with your talent. So every time people will come and tell me about JulissaDesigns, and this is my story, this is my testimony. I'm trying to glorify the Lord with my gifts and talents, and I'm trying to also create modest clothing because I do believe that women should be dressing up modestly. And like I said, there are times where I'm like, I can go and find the most beautiful fabric, and then I put it up to the light. I'm like, this is such a see-through fabric. Uh, I'm not buying it, right? It's not going to do any purpose for me in my designs. For whatever I can use it. If I use layer, that's a different thing, obviously. But people will look at me and be like, if you want to sell more, you should make more sexy clothes because that's the industry. It sells, if you make things like that. And I will be like, but that's not my brand is not about that. And then, when I do fashion shows, I see models trying to modify my looks. And I'll be like, if you speak to any of the models that work with me, they will tell you I do this kind of prep talk before the show, and I'll be like, I don't want you guys walking out there with this. I don't like when people do this kind of type of fierce type of. It's so annoying. The moment people hear you talk about fashion, they think you're like you have this attitude of like this Vogue magazine attitude. It's so weird because I don't like that at all. They do this kind of motion with their body about fears and walking like all the sexy walks and things like that. And I'm like, I just don't like that. So, anyways, but every time I tell the models, hey guys, the main goal from me being in this fashion show is to share the gospel and glorify God with my gifts and talents. So I want you guys to think about that when you're walking down the runway. And even before I tell them what garment they're gonna wear and we do the fitting, are you comfortable wearing it dressed that says glory to Jesus, right? That's number one, right? I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable or being forced to do something that they don't believe in or that they don't like. So all of that is so necessary when I do fashion shows. And, because that's the whole point, right? And I had seen models try to modify, my outfits or try to make it shorter too. And, I look into that and I'm like, I don't to the point that I can say to coordinators, I'll be like, unfortunately, she's not going to be in the show. She's not going to work for me, things like that. Um, she's not getting the vision that I'm here for and all of that. And just trying to be honest, because if I don't go with this strong message when I get the opportunity to do fashion shows, I really have no business being here, especially after God gives you a revelation that you should be using your talents to glorify the Lord, right? So there are things that happen. I'm also very kind of like, you know, when I'm talking to God, I'm like, JulissaDesigns can disappear any moment, right? I can just stop working on it, right? And I'm still gonna be me. I'm still gonna be with the Lord, because what society does, it puts your identity on what you do, and once you understand that you work really to glorify the Lord, but you cannot just idolize your career more than you cannot idolize anything, but we tend to idolize career. And I think what happened here with Scott Vincent was that he saw that he was putting this platform of you are amazing. When people say to you, um, you're so amazing, everything that you do is amazing, and like it's so superficial because they speaking of what you do, they don't really know you as a person. And it's like you can be like, oh my goodness, can somebody ask me if I need prayer? I'd rather you ask me that than ask me first. Like what, I saw what you did, and I love everything that you do and all of that. One thing is to obviously to take a compliment and all of that, but sometimes it's like I don't really want to talk about, my branding, or maybe he was like, I don't even want to talk about cosmetics today. And but the thing is that people don't realize that they identify you with what you do, and they think like you're ready to be available for that the moment they see you. It's almost like how you hear about comedians, right? That some of them go through the whole deal of being depressed. And you would think, how can a comedian go depressed, right? They always make people laugh. And I think that's what it is. It's so expected for them. If you see them on the street or something, maybe somebody famous that they get invited to a TV show, they immediately people expect them to be so like cheerful and make us laugh and all of that. And they're like, I'm not in that moment right now. And what I notice about myself is that even though I'm so thankful to the Lord that I still get to do fashion shows and clothing line and all of that. Um, you know, people think that I love in fashion shows, and it's not. I don't know how many times I said this. It's not really my thing when it comes to like the places that I want to be in. I enjoy it most. It's strange. It depends the situation, but sometimes I'm like I'm ready to leave right now. You have no idea. And you're like, wait, this is what you want to do, right? It's almost like it comes to what I do, but it's not really like my thing. Um, like I said, there are a lot of um misperception when it comes to the industry. Like I can be in the back room waiting for our presentation, and all of the matters we're talking about maybe God, and like I will be telling them about glorifying the Lord and all of that. But then people see that people assume, I guess, I don't know if maybe like in the movies, people expect has seen this happen. They think that models and fashion designers, all they talk about is that outfits and matching shoes and makeup ideas and let's do this and that, hairstyles and all of that. And we could be having deep conversations in the back room about the Lord and using your talents to glorify God. And it's like it's almost like this type of um thing that people don't get to see, right? And it's so important, right? Because when I go out there and meet people and meet models and they hear why is it why is this dress says glory to Jesus, like what is all that about? They kind of like, you can see some of them, they realize, oh my goodness, that is so true. And they're like, oh, we never had a designer who been here and done that before. And then after they realize what it is that you're there for, they're like, oh, they're sitting like this trying to hear you out. And it's so amazing to see. And when it comes to like talents and glorifying the Lord with what you do, I think for him, Scott Vincent saying that he felt empty, um, I think it happens to a lot of people in a because when people see somebody being so good at what they do and being so famous and all of that, it can happen to artists. I think they say they feel so empty, right? They have millions of people singing their song, and then they go in the back room, and they could be just like depressed because then you start to think, are these people here for? Are these people here just because I'm famous and I have a lot of money, I have influence? They're not really trying to be my friend, right? Because at the end of the show, like it's done, right? Everybody goes back to their normal life, back to where they came from, basically. And it can get empty. I think that's the reason why a lot of artists also go through depression and they turn to substance abuse too. And that's what it is. Like it came a time, I think, for me, but I was like, I can just close. When I had the studio, I was like, I can just close the studio and be like, no problem. And that's exactly what I did in 2023. I was like, I can just close the studio. And I was like, I'm just going to close it. I thought God was done with the whole thing. And I closed it. And, um, we have to be so careful to find our identity into that. I just heard somebody speak about how when you do something for so long and people admire you because you do that for so long, and then one day you kind of like walk away from it, people identify you with that thing that you did. And when they see you again, they find it so hard to kind of like not feel some type of disappointment. They feel like kind of like you let them down because you stopped doing it, right? And it's like, do you understand that they had to do that in order to um in order to feel better in life, right? Because if Scott Vincent didn't stop everything for one day and be like, I'm just gonna start preparing myself, like he said, to become a priest and study towards that. Um, Imagine him right now, right? Doing this whole branding, doing these interviews with celebrities, and being called for fashion shows. When you do something for so long, even if it's creating you money, even if it's the brand is growing, at some point, if it's leaving you empty daily, it can really lead you to something really bad. And I think that's why it's so important to hear about his testimony. Like I said, some people might not even want to listen to it because they'd be like, why is he trying to be a priest? He should be a pastor and things like that. Because people have their belief and they have, they have this idea of or whatever expectation, I guess you can say. But the main testimony is like you have a pot of gold here, and you were like, you know what, I need to glorify the Lord with what I do, right? Um, and if that's what he wanted to do, then I'm so glad that he did that. He says here that former cosmetic executive ordained priest is driven by restlessness of love for the poor. Um, that's the thing. When you have that calling inside of you, that's why you have to answer it, because if you don't, and people will look at you, but you have cars, you have houses, you have so much. If it's not at the end of the day when everybody's gone and you still feel empty, that's just a big sign right there, right? It's a big sign. There are days that I can go to a fashion show because people, that's the thing with me. When you're an entrepreneur and people see you doing events, they always say, do you make any money? Like they just want to know if you make money. If you don't make money, you're not doing anything. And they don't even realize, hey, I might not made it. I might not have sold anything here, but I spoke with 5 people about glorifying God. I spoke with 5 people who listened to me intensively, trying to figure out why it is that my clothing brand is like that. Why do I use worship music to do a fashion show? Why do I tell models to walk modestly? Why do I tell them not to pose like the world makes you pose, that they can also smile when they walk down the runway in my collection? And they are, you know, those are 5 people who I can say, I might not have sold anything here, because some people also think you'll do everything just for the money. I might not have sold anything here, but I shared the gospel with 5 people, and I told them that our gifts and talents are to be used to be glorifying the Lord. And you could tell that something was moving there because they listened to me intensively, right? And that's, if that's what God wants me to do, I'm so happy to do it like that. Like I said, in 2013, when I was like, oh my goodness, I was walking the wrong way, trying to glorify myself. And I'm like, I need to put the glory to God. And there are moments where I'm like, you know I need to just, maybe I shouldn't. There are things that you think about. I'm like, man, if I want to make this huge event, maybe I shouldn't use gospel music. But then it's kind of, what are you talking about? You need to be consistent with how you started, right? Because there's a reason why I still have the desire after so many years to continue to do this thing, right? And continue to do the shows and continue to tell people about the Lord. And we'll see where God is like leading me. But I feel like some things when it comes to career and things like that in the Christian community is so like dismissive sometimes. Not everybody's called to leave everything behind and go to a poor country and be a disciple over there, or like not as a missionary, right? But I'm so glad that people do that, right? It's almost like we all have our part in the vine of the Lord, right? In the We all have our part, but that doesn't mean that just because this group of teenagers are going to be missionaries in Guatemala makes this other person who you know, volunteers every day at the local food market, it makes them less than, right? And I feel like a lot of times it's a lot of less than. It's almost like they expect everybody to be after the same thing. We all have a commission to share the gospel, but we all have all different talents, right? I cannot expect everybody I meet to be a YouTuber. Like that is insane. I cannot expect everybody that I meet to be a singer, right? Or a instrument player. And a lot of the times within the community of believer, it's like if you don't do one of these two talents, then you really have no part, right? Because it's so emphasized so much, right? And there's so much that anybody can do. Not a lot of people who do glorify the Lord want to be come out and say it to people, right? They don't want to share the testimony. And even if Scott Vincent, um, he wanted to be a priest, doesn't mean that everybody right now who believes in the Lord, who wants to glorify the Lord, who works in the beauty industry, should just stop everything, like I said in my previous episode, and just go out and be a priest now. There are other ways you can do it. Let me tell you, the biggest eye opener for me when it came, and I'm talking about me a lot, meaning the stuff that I do because of the similarities between fashion and beauty industry, right? When I did the show in Times Square, in 2022 already, I can't believe it's been that long. I was so shocked to find people, um, models were coming up to me and saying, oh, I'm a Christian too. I cannot believe that you said all of that. And when this I started introducing myself to people, and they're like, I cannot believe I was feeling convicted about modeling again. And here is God sending me a Christian designer, things like that. And then I hear about photographers who came to me, and it's almost like they were talking to me. I'm like, I can barely hear you. It was so weird. I'm like, they're like, we never see anybody do this here in in New York Fashion Week in the industry. We never seen anybody do this. We're so happy that you're here to glorify the Lord with your gifts and talents. There's a way to do things, right? Not everybody's supposed to drop everything, because people will be like, well, I can never be a priest, so I can never be glorifying the Lord, right? I can never be a pastor, right? So I'm not going to glorify the Lord. It's so wrong to even think like that. God gives you different talents for a reason. There's a way, even the way that you work and the way that you are with your coworkers, that glorifies the Lord, right? So just something to think about, you guys. I didn't mean to make this video longer too. But I just wanted to share this. I think it's so much needed, especially now when there's a lot of, graduations happening. People, even people as they are, a lot of people losing their jobs. So a lot of people also reconsidering career choices and all of that. There's so much opportunity to share the gospel, so much opportunity with everything that you do to share the gospel, and by doing so you glorify the Lord just by doing that, right? So we were created to use our gifts and talents to glorify God. So remember that, guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming to the channel, and everybody who's listening to the podcast. Have a good day. God bless. Hi everybody, this is Julissa. Thank you so much for coming to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good day, everybody. God bless.